Why the Texas Longhorns should, keyword should, be fine with Arch Manning in Quinn Ewers' absence.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, why Texas will be just fine with Arch Manning while Quinn Ewers deals with a abdomen or oblique strain. In the second segment, Texas is the number one team in the country again for the first time since October 2008. So some major events that have happened, since the last time that Texas was ranked the number one team in the country. And then in the last segment, my top 5 Heisman candidates going into week 4 of college football. All of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So once again, we all know, at this point, all Texas fans that, Quinn Ewers is dealing with the oblique/abdomen strain, and he is expected to miss at least 1 week, right? They said that it's not as serious as initially thought. He looked fine, on the sidelines, looked like he was moving around decently, but, especially a quarterback when you're, throwing the ball, moving your body, moving your hips, dealing with all that torque, especially in your torso area, to throw the ball and throw the ball with, power down the field. It's going to be, an injury that's going to, hurt him a little bit. Right. And so, even though it's not as serious as initially thought, you still expect him to miss the ULM game. And then you have to see how, he's feeling moving forward and how fast he can get back on the field. But, as also, all Texas fans and really everybody in the country knows, Texas has the most popular backup quarterback in the country. Right. And our backup, Arch Manning, is probably more popular than almost every starting quarterback in the country, right? And we saw, him have his breakout game when Quinn Ewers went down against UTSA and come out and throw 5 touchdowns, right? And we talked all offseason about how Texas, probably has the best quarterback room in the country, right? And so now it's time to, really put that on display and see what you have in Arch Manning, the future of Texas football, while Quinn Ewers is temporarily sidelined with that abdomen injury. And so when you look at it, I think there's 4 key reasons. Right? Let me make sure I'm putting up the right number on the screen. 4 key reasons why Texas should, right? You still got to go out there and play the games and win them, but why Texas should be just fine in Quinn Ewers' absence. Hopefully it's brief, right? The first reason is I think Arch Manning is just a hell of a football player. Like when you look at it, this isn't your typical, backup quarterback situation where your starter goes down and then your, expectations for your season drastically change, right? Or your football team drastically changes. Now, obviously, if Quinn Ewers is out, weeks to a month, then that may affect, the ceiling of this Texas football team, because even though Arch is super talented, he's still relatively young with, very little experience. And I think in some of the bigger games, that's where you need a player that's, poised and experienced and a veteran like Quinn Ewers, right, to handle those big environments, going into Alabama, going into Michigan in the big house, right? I think Quinn Ewers long term is still very much our best option at quarterback, right? But like I said, Arch Manning is an all-world talent, right? One of the highest rated recruits to ever come out of high school. In the few opportunities we've seen him, we've seen that Manning pedigree, right? But not just Peyton and Eli. We've seen him on the ground as well, So, like I said, this is not your traditional, backup quarterback situation where your quarterback goes down and all hope is lost. Arch Manning can certainly come in, like we saw against UTSA, and win you football games because he is a hell of a quarterback, right? When you look at it, how many quarterbacks can make the throws that he makes, can be as accurate as he is, can navigate the pocket the way that he does, throw with accuracy and anticipation, and then take off for 67 yards, juking people in the process and run that long for a touchdown on a read option, right? He's just super talented. And I don't think it's crazy for you to say that Arch Manning right now is a top 15 quarterback in the country. Some people would say Arch Manning is a top 10 quarterback in the country. I'm not going to go that far. There's really some great signal callers in college football right now. But based on what you've seen across the college football landscape, I mean, like right now, we played Michigan, right? Who wouldn't take Arch Manning over Davis Warren right now? You know what I mean? So when you look at it and look at the college football landscape, there's no doubt in my mind that Arch Manning is a top 15 quarterback in college football right now, even though he's Texas backup. And a top 15 quarterback should be able to go out there and beat teams like ULM, Mississippi State, And then hopefully Quinn Ewers is back after the bye against Oklahoma. Second thing is, I think Steve Sarkisian will call the offense in a way that protects Arch Manning. And I don't think it's, necessarily going to be, he's going to rein him in or, have training wheels on him or not really, let him let loose and just throw the ball down the field. I just think Steve Sarkisian's offense, and that's the reason that quarterbacks have been so successful in it. You know what I mean? It's because it's really predicated on the run game. And when you have a strong run game, that opens up everything else on the outside at the tight end and wide receiver positions. And oh yeah, Texas might have the best wide receiver group in the country, right? Talking about 1 through 5 or 6. We've seen all these guys come in and make plays thus far in the first 3 games of the season. So much of this offense is predicated on the run game or extensions of the run game, right? I expect Jaden Blue to come back. Trey Wisner has been really good. And then Jared Gibson, has been exceptional as a true freshman, right? That 3-headed monster at running back behind this offensive line who has just been moving people for the first 3 weeks. I fully expect that they'll still be able to run the ball at a high level against ULM and then, eventually Mississippi State as well if Quinn Ewers is not back for that game. And so I think even with Arch Manning in now, Steve Sarkisian will lean even more on that run game, right? Like he's not going to just take the ball out of Arch Manning's hands and run the ball 50 times a game. But I do think that he'll lean a little bit more on that run game to make Arch Manning comfortable. Also, when you talk about, extensions of the run game, you have like the screen passes where you're getting the ball to your playmakers really quickly, right? And just seeing what they can do, in terms of yards after the catch. That's really an extension of the run game. The jet sweeps, the motions, the pop passes, right? Those are all, just kind of short handoffs or short little passes that are essentially extensions of the run game, right? That are not you just handing the ball, turning around, handing the ball off and running that inside zone. So we're going to see a ton of that, which is going to open up the run game. But then when you look at our passing game, a large portion of our passing game comes from the RPOs and the play actions, right? So if Jaden Blue, Jared Gibson and Trey Wisner are able to run the ball down people's throats, really create those holes. Now, when you're faking the ball to the running back on the RPO, right, that's going to open up easier lanes for Arch Manning, and it's going to make his reads, his job a lot easier, right? Now, when you go to that play action after you've been gashing them with the run, they have to respect it. Those linebackers and safeties have to come down, and that's going to open up easier passing lanes for Arch Manning on the back end. And it's going to make his reads a lot easier because the defense is going to have to respect the RPO and the play action, right? Even though Arch is probably fully capable, right? He's probably fully capable of just dropping back, 3-step, 5-step drop, and just throwing the ball all over the field. That's not how Steve Sarkisian runs this offense, right? This is not going to be the Colorado Shadur Sanders offense where there's no motion, no running game, no play action. They're just asking Shadur Sanders to go out there every play, and just run 4 or 5, 3-4 wide receivers out there, and for him to just find somebody down the field. No, Steve Sarkisian is going to create the perfect situation for Arch Manning where they're going to run the ball at a high level. They're going to create the quick game and short passes, short opportunities for him to get the ball to their playmakers and allow them to get yards after the catch. Play action, RPOs, open up some easier passing lanes for Arch Manning. And then a few times throughout the game, he'll allow him to drop back and really, scan down the field and make plays to the wide receivers. But the offense is going to be really predicated around the run game, and that's going to help a young quarterback, as talented as he is, it's going to help a young quarterback in Arch Manning get settled in and get comfortable. The next reason is the schedule is very favorable, right? This is the best schedule you could ask for, the best part of the schedule you could ask for when your starting quarterback goes down, right? The next 3 weeks for Texas, ULM this Saturday, Mississippi State the following Saturday, right? Your first SEC game, and Mississippi State, they just lost to Toledo, right? I'm not saying that Texas is just going to go in there and roll Mississippi State, but right now they look like one of the worst teams in the SEC, a team that's certainly in transition. And then the week after that, you have a bye leading up to Red River against Oklahoma. So that gives Quinn Ewers, right, if he is to miss Mississippi State and ULM, 3 full weeks, 3.5 weeks, whatever it is, to get healthy or get healthy enough to play against Oklahoma in Red River. So if you needed to throw Arch Manning in there for a set of games, you couldn't ask for any better set, right, or any better 3-week stretch than ULM, Mississippi State, and a bye week. And the last reason I think that Texas and Arch Manning will be just fine is because the defense won't force Arch into a shootout, right? If the defense forced Arch Manning to score 35 or 40 points to win, then we might be in trouble, right? But this is a defense that as of now has only allowed 19 points on the season or less than 7 points a game, right? They're only allowing 137 passing yards per game. Now, the run defense hasn't been as sharp as you would expect. We kind of thought that, when you lose players like Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. They did allow a 100-yard rusher against Colorado State. They did allow a 50-yard touchdown run against UTSA. So there have been some bad moments. Overall, they've been pretty solid, right? It's just been those few times where they've allowed a couple of running backs to get off on them. But the good thing is, because Texas has dominated and because Texas is going to put a bunch of points on the board, even if your run defense isn't the best, right? Teams aren't going to be able to run the ball on you all game, because eventually they're going to have to start passing the ball to try to catch up to where you are on the scoreboard and beat you, right? Like, even the running back that for UTSA that had the 53-yard touchdown run, he only finished with 68 yards because he only ran the ball 6 times, because eventually UTSA had to pivot to just throwing the ball over and over again to try to catch up to Texas, right? And that's what almost every team that plays against Texas is going to have to do, right? Throw the ball a bunch to try to, keep up with Texas on the scoreboard. So when I look at this defense, right, Arch Manning is probably only going to have to score 21, maybe 24 points at the max to win games. And I certainly think he's capable of doing that in this offense. So Arch Manning, as long as Quinn Ewers, isn't hurt, past the Oklahoma game, Arch Manning certainly should be fine against ULM. I think he'll be fine against Mississippi State. And that bye week gives Quinn Ewers an extra week to get healthy against, for one of the biggest games of the season against Oklahoma in Red River. A quick word from our sponsors. And like I said, some major world events, right? We're going to have fun with this segment. Some major world events, major pop culture events that have happened since the last time Texas was the number 1 team in the country. Once again, October 2008. It's been a long time. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Gametime, right? Pick an upcoming excuse me. All right, hold on. I'm sorry about that. But this app is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Some of the best features of the Gametime app: priority Gametime Picks. Once again, creation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Make sure you toggle this feature so you can see the all-in pricing. Seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right. Today's episode also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. It's getting close. Better jump on it. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right. So, like I said, we're going to have some fun with this segment. I picked out, I believe, 15 major world events, pop culture events, things that you would recognize since the last time that Texas was the #1 team in the country. I believe the AP poll came out October 26th, 2008, and Texas was the #1 team in the country. And then, unfortunately, their very next game against Texas Tech was when, the Michael Crabtree debacle happened, and, Blake Gideon dropped the interception. And then, they missed the tackle on Michael Crabtree, and ultimately that cost Texas an opportunity to play in the national championship game that year with Colt McCoy. Instead, we had to watch Oklahoma and Florida, and we all Texas fans firmly believe that if Colt McCoy and that Texas team would have made it to the championship game that year, they would have beat Tim Tebow and the Florida Gators, right? So, I mean, that, that Michael Crabtree play is just a gift that keeps on giving. But thankfully, right, 16 years later, Texas is back on top at #1. And, hopefully we know how to tackle wide receivers now, right? So when you look at it, these are all things that have happened since the last time Texas was ranked #1 in the country. Barack Obama was elected the first African-American president of the United States since the last time that Texas was the number one team in the country. Google Chrome, a lot of your favorite browsers, right? A lot of people love to use Google Chrome on their phone, on their laptop, whatever, Google Chrome, my favorite browser, it was released since the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. Bitcoin, right? So many people into crypto. So many people have made a lot of money on Bitcoin. Some people have lost a lot of money on Bitcoin. Nonetheless, right? The cryptocurrency and all the coins and different things like that has been a huge boom. And, a lot of people have, kind of staked their career or their job on it or whatever, right? But Bitcoin has been a huge part of our society since the last time that Texas was the number one team in the country, right? I know everybody remembers this, or you may not remember it. I don't know how old everybody is that, I'm talking to. The swine flu, right? We had another pandemic recently, of course, with, COVID-19 that we're still dealing with, but the swine flu, right? That was really the first pandemic I remember. The pandemic began in North America, the swine flu pandemic, since Texas was the number one team in the country. The iPad, right? I believe the iPhone was already out, but the iPad, right? Like, Apple's next, big new invention, kind of, continuing that line from the iPod to the iPhone to the iPad and then ultimately the MacBook. But the iPad came out since the last time that Texas was the number one team in the country. Now the kids love the iPad. You can just put the little YouTube on them, put Coco Melon, whatever they be watching, just give it, to your child and, let them go sit over there in the corner and do what they do. But the iPad has came out, the very first one since Texas was the number one team in the country. Instagram, right? Everybody's favorite app. I know everybody likes to get on Instagram, post their best fits, post what they're eating, post their travel destinations. Everybody likes to get on Instagram and make it look good, right? Last time Texas was the number one team in the country, Instagram didn't exist. Right? Think about how long you've been using Instagram. Think about how long you've been posting on the gram, trying to impress your friends, trying to impress your followers, trying to make it look good, trying to make it look better than it really looked. You know what I'm saying? Like we've been doing that for a long time on Instagram since Texas was the number one team in the country. Osama bin Laden was assassinated, killed, whatever you want to say, right? Osama bin Laden was killed after or since the last time that Texas was the number one team in the country. That one's kind of crazy. Grand Theft Auto 5 was released. The last one in the series. I think Grand Theft Auto 6 is supposed to come out in 2025, right? But there's been like this super long hiatus for whatever reason. I'm not sure. I never was huge into Grand Theft Auto. Like I didn't play it. I've always only played like sports titles like Madden, 2K, MLB The Show. But, obviously all my friends used to love playing, Grand Theft Auto. And I remember in 2013, I was in college. I was sophomore in college. And so they were playing it every day, like when it came out, right? But the last Grand Theft Auto has come out since Texas was the number one team in the country, right? And that was over a decade ago that the last Grand Theft Auto came out. But I do know in 2025, when Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, a lot of people will be really excited to play it. China ended their one-child policy that lasted 35 years, right? China has ended their one-child policy since the last time that Texas was the number one team in the country. I mean, the one-child policy is just ridiculous to begin with, you know what I mean? But it did have some benefits, for China or whatever. That's just crazy, thankful for the democracy or, somewhat democracy we have, in the United States. Imagine if we had a one-child policy in the United States. You don't even got to think about that too long, but I mean, that's just crazy. But anyways, that has ended since the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. Drake, a lot of people's favorite rapper, right? I know everybody's not just super high on Drake right now because the Kendrick Lamar beef. Everybody's acting like they never liked Drake, but nonetheless, Drake's still one of the greatest rappers of all time, greatest artists of all time. Drake's entire discography has come out since Texas was the number one team in the country. So Far Gone came out in 2009, his first official album. So his entire discography, Drake, one of the greatest artists of all time, who's been, essentially a staple since the last time Texas was the number one team in the country, right? Been in that argument for the best artist in the game, essentially since then. His entire discography has come since Texas was the number one team in the country. Beyonce, it's Virgo season. My birthday was on the 16th. You know what I'm saying? So shout out Beyonce, the queen of the Virgos, right? And, damn near every woman's favorite artist in the world right now. Beyonce had her first child, Blue Ivy, right? I don't know how old Blue Ivy is, but she's pretty old now. You know what I mean? Beyonce has had her first child since, you know what I mean? Or she had her first child after the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. And like I said, Blue Ivy's a teenager now. the Oprah Winfrey show ended. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car, right? Like, when's the last time you've seen the Oprah Winfrey show or thought about the Oprah Winfrey show? That ended after the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. 50 Shades of Grey, the book that had them all going crazy, right? They were all reading 50 Shades of Grey, couldn't wait to go see the movie, had them suggesting crazy stuff to you. You know what I mean? Just, 50 Shades of Grey, it was wild, right? That entire series has come out since the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. Kim Kardashian and Chris Humphrey's 72-day marriage happened after the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. Sticking with that family, Bruce Jenner became Caitlyn Jenner since the last time Texas was the number one team in the country. And one of the most infamous rants of all time, when Kanye West interrupted Taylor Swift on stage and said, "I'm going to let you finish, but Beyonce, blah, blah, blah." That happened since the last time that Texas was the number one team in the country. So grateful to be in this position. We've been through hell, for a long time as Texas fans, and glad that we're back on top where we should be, the number one team in the country for the first time since October 26th. 2008. A quick word from our sponsors, and then I get into my top 5 Heisman candidates going into week 4. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by Return On You. Hey, Longhorn fans, have you heard about ROY? It stands for Return On You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As you all know, NIL has changed the game for athletes. ROY, or Return On You, changes the NIL game for fans. Here's why Return On You is different. You can directly support players. ROY allows fans to directly back their favorite college athletes. With ROY, fans can play a key role in shaping the future of their favorite teams, while athletes maximize their name, image, and likeness potential. Exclusive content access. When fans contribute to a successful campaign, they receive access to exclusive content from the athletes, such as their announcement decision, behind-the-scenes footage, and other personal reflections, all of which are available only to the fans who supported the athlete. And no-risk contributions. Fans' contributions are securely held and are only distributed if the athlete makes the decision that aligns with the fan support. If not, the money is returned to the fan. Download Return On You, or ROY, for iOS or Android and enter referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Visit joinroy.com for additional details. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Get the ROY app for iOS or Android and start making an impact on your favorite team. Once again, use referral code Locked On for an opportunity to win $5,000 cash. Get off the sidelines and into the NIL game with ROY, or support the players and change the game with ROY. Return On You. All right, ending the show with my top 5 Heisman candidates going into week 4. Number 5, I got Quinn Ewers, right? Obviously, if he doesn't play against ULM, then there will be an adjustment to the top 5, but I still have Quinn Ewers in my top 5 as a Heisman candidate. One of the biggest wins of the college football season, going up to Michigan and dominating them in that fashion. And even though he got hurt against UTSA, he still put up 185 yards and 2 touchdowns prior to him going out, right? He was electric, in the first quarter, second quarter, whenever he got injured, 185 yards and 2 touchdowns before he got hurt and Arch Manning took over. When you look at it, or just to put that in perspective, that's more than Carson Beck. Obviously a different level of competition, but Quinn Ewers in that one full quarter had more yards and touchdowns than Carson Beck had the entire game against Kentucky. So right now, Quinn Ewers still number 5 in my Heisman rankings, 692 total yards, 8 touchdowns, and a 73% completion percentage thus far. Like I said, if he doesn't play against ULM, I'll probably have to take him out of my top 5. But right now, Quinn Ewers still in there at number 5 in terms of my Heisman rankings. Jalen Milroe, number 4, right? I had to take him out last week, but he's back in the Heisman rankings going into week 4. Just an exceptional game against Wisconsin, 5 total touchdowns in that game. And when you look at it, 746 total yards on the season, no interceptions, and 14 combined passing and rushing touchdowns. So Jalen Milroe had a great game, jumps back into my Heisman rankings going into week 4. Dillon Gabriel, this is his first appearance in my Heisman rankings, right? The reason I hadn't had him in there is because you struggle to beat Idaho. You only beat them by 10 points. You struggle to beat Boise State. You only beat them by 3 points. But then they played Oregon State, right? And they smashed them, I believe, 49-14, right? So we're finally seeing Oregon look like the team they were propped up to be coming into the season. And Dylan Gabriel has been exceptional. But now that, like I said, the team is starting to look like a great team, he's made his way into my Heisman rankings. 940 total yards thus far, 8 touchdowns and no turnovers, an insane 84% completion percentage up until this point. Dylan Gabriel jumps up to number 3 in my Heisman rankings. Jackson Dart, he has been phenomenal, right? I mean, Jackson Dart has been phenomenal. If you were able to put some money on Jackson Dart before the season to win the Heisman, that may be one of the best future bets of the year. Hell, you could still put some money on Jackson Dart to win, and it'll be a pretty good bet. 1,226 total yards and 11 total touchdowns thus far with an 83% completion percentage. They didn't play anybody the first 2 weeks, Furman and then Middle Tennessee State. And then he did it again against Wake Forest, a Power 5 opponent, right? So if he can keep this up throughout SEC play, Jackson Dart is going to have a strong argument for the Heisman at the end of the year. And then number 1, he's been number 1 since the first week of the season when he went into the Swamp and beat Florida. He's done nothing to drop in my rankings thus far. Cam Ward has been absolutely exceptional. 1,081 total yards and 12 touchdowns while leading the nation in QBR with a 94.4, completing over 74% of his passes. Like I said, Cam Ward has been absolutely phenomenal and has the Miami Hurricanes really looking like a threat finally for the first time in a long time. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em. Peace. I don't know what I was doing. Hook 'em. Peace.